You keep replaying what they did. You are studying the wrong person. The secret Jung and Nietzsche point to waits at your door, your name on a sealed letter. Jung says the betrayal delivered something. Nietzsche says what it does to whoever never opens it. The handwriting is yours. By the end, you will know what it says and why you sent it. The floor drops. You know the feeling already. Something behind the ribs goes cold and quietly starts calling itself wisdom. Give it its real name. It is a delivery you have not opened. So this is what you will see. Why the advice to armor up and vanish is a trap dressed as a cure. Why the wound landed exactly where it did and nowhere else. What Nietzsche named the slow poison that betrayal leaves in the blood. What Jung means when he says the thing you cannot forgive in another is the thing you buried in yourself. The one who hurt you only ever carried it, and the handwriting on that envelope is the part you will recognize first. Start with the specific one. Forget betrayal as an idea and picture the actual face, the person you vouched for, the one you brought inside, taught, defended when the room had doubts. Then the turn, quiet or loud, and the discovery that you had been standing with your back to a door you introduced them to. Take one life to hold the shape of it. A woman, 58. She spent 3 years mentoring someone younger, put her own name under theirs on the record, opened every door she had. She had a habit the people around her teased her for. She always kept a second chair pulled up to the side of her desk, ready, as though making room for the next person were the same thing as being good. She learned what they had done secondhand, in a hallway, from someone who assumed she already knew. Anger came later. The first thing she felt was the floor going out from under a version of herself she had trusted for decades, the one who had never once picked the wrong person to believe in. If that is close to something you carry, you know what arrives next. Advice, an avalanche of it. The world is full of voices ready to hand you the lesson. Kindness is weakness. Trust is a liability. You were naive, and now you must become strategic. Manage your image. Never explain yourself. Go quiet. Go cold. Become unreadable. Be the one who is feared instead of the one who is used. Show them nothing. Make your absence a weapon. There is a reason that advice feels so good in the mouth. It hands you a villain and a project in the same breath. The villain is them. The project is armor. And for a few days, the armor does feel like strength, because anything feels like strength after you have been that powerless. Jung has a plain way of describing what suffering does when it cannot find its meaning. Left without meaning, the suffering itself rots quietly into embitterment and sterility. That is the real danger he points to. And hardening does nothing to answer it. The armor resolves nothing. It freezes the suffering in place and calls the freezing maturity. The first turn is the one nobody selling armor will say out loud. The advice to go cold looks like the exit from the betrayal. Follow it far enough, and it delivers you back to the betrayal, with your own hand on the handle now. The person who hurt you treated a human being as an instrument. The cure being sold to you asks you to treat every human being as an instrument. Yourself first, before anyone can do it to you. You do not escape the logic of what wounded you by becoming fluent in it. And it works in the way a tourniquet works. It stops the bleeding by stopping the blood. You lose less, you also feel less, reach less, yet reach less. The people who could still get in were always going to be few, and armor seals the door on every one of them at once. The ones who would have hurt you alongside the few who never would. So the woman did what the advice said. She got precise. She got guarded. She read every new face for the angle. Within a year, she was safer and lonelier, and in a way she could not yet name, a little more like the person who had used her. She had grown fluent in the one thing she once could not imagine anyone doing to her. That is the trap that looks exactly like the way out. But there is a name for what was happening inside her, and a man named it more than a century ago while it ate him alive. Nietzsche watches what happens to kindness when it is wounded and left to rot. Therefore, before we go back to the letter on the table, we have to name the poison in the blood. Nietzsche gives a name to the exact way the powerless take revenge when they cannot take it in the open. He calls it resentment. Ordinary anger flares and clears. Resentment stays. It is anger with nowhere to discharge, so it turns inward and begins to build until it becomes a whole way of seeing. What it does is quiet. Real strength, in Nietzsche's picture, acts and then forgets. It meets the obstacle, answers it, and moves on. the way a healthy body throws off an infection and keeps no shrine to it. Resentment cannot forget. It holds the wound open on purpose, because the wound has become the center of a private identity. You are now, before anything else, the one who was wronged. An identity built on a wound needs the wound to stay fresh. This is the part that unsettles people. You would expect resentment to feel like weakness. It feels like competence. It feels like a hard course you paid for in blood. And the one who paid does not get fooled twice. That is the flattering part. You believe you have finally learned how people work. You have learned one person in one betrayal, and now you grade every stranger against that single exam. It is a cage with good lighting. Every new face arrives already answering for something someone else did. Something has quietly happened here. The person who betrayed you is gone, and you have given them a permanent address. You carry them into every room now. You consult them before you trust anyone. They set the terms of your caution, your silence, your distance. You believe you have cut them off. You have promoted them to landlord. This is the exact self the world sells you as victory. Make them fear you. Give nothing away. Hide what you want behind a smooth, managed surface. Nietzsche would recognize the whole program on sight. It is resentment handed a training manual, the revenge of the powerless sold as strategy, and it keeps you bound to the very person it promises to free you from. There is something stranger still about who tends to betray whom, and Nietzsche gives us the grain of it. A gift creates a debt. When you lift someone, defend them, hand them your access and your good name, you also hand them a weight they never asked to carry. A strong ego bears gratitude lightly. A fragile one feels the debt curdle. Being helped starts to feel like proof of being lesser, and the fastest way to level the ground is to strike the one who did the lifting. That is why betrayal so often comes from the person you raised rather than the person you crossed. The help you gave was the very debt they needed to burn. The poison is patient. It rarely announces itself. It shows up as a small new hardness in how you speak to a stranger, a reflex of suspicion towards someone who has done nothing yet, a cold flick of satisfaction when a person who trusts easily gets hurt because it proves you right. That satisfaction is the tell. That is the poison speaking, and it is speaking now in your own voice. So the woman, a year on, safer and colder, caught it in a small moment. A younger colleague, eager and open and easy to read, reminded her of no one in particular and of the betrayer completely. She felt the reflex rise. Warn them off. Teach them the lesson. Be the voice that says the world is not kind. And underneath the reflex, she heard, clearly, whose voice it actually was. Nietzsche could name the poison because he had swallowed his own dose of it, and where that ended is worth knowing later in this. But naming a poison does not empty the blood. For that we go back to the table and finally ask what is inside the envelope. In a hand you will know before you can read it, because Jung's answer to why the wound landed where it did is stranger than any of this, and far more useful. Ask the question the armor exists to prevent. Why did it hurt that much? A stranger cutting a deal against you costs you money, or time, or a night of sleep. It does not reach the floor of you. This did. Betrayal by someone close does something a stranger cannot, and Jung has the most precise account of why. He describes a state and borrows a name for it from the anthropologists: participation mystique. It is a condition of partial merger, where the line between you and another person is never fully drawn, where some of your inner life is living inside them and theirs inside you, without either of you having decided it. It is ordinary. It is how closeness works before we make it conscious. With the people we let all the way in, we become two rooms with a door between them that we have both forgotten is open. This is why betrayal by an intimate is two losses folded into one. You lose the person. You also lose the part of yourself you had been storing inside them, because you were storing something there. Everyone does. This is the second idea, and it is the engine of the whole thing. Jung's word is projection. We take contents of our own psyche that we have not owned, and without knowing it, we set them down onto another person, and from then on, we experience them as belonging to that person alone. Some of what we hand over is our darkness, the anger and appetite and ruthlessness we cannot bear to find in ourselves, and some of what we hand over is our gold, our worth, our strength, our own authority, given to someone else to keep because we could not yet hold it ourselves. Look at what you had done. Long before anyone betrayed anything, you gave that person your own good opinion of yourself to hold. You made them the keeper of your worth, so that as long as they valued you, you were valuable. You handed them your anger too. the whole capacity to say no and mean it. Because being the kind one meant never being the hard one. You gave away your own teeth and asked them to promise never to bite. You outsourced every part of yourself that felt too dangerous to keep at home. Now set the merge beside the projection, and the pain makes exact sense. The betrayal did not only take the person, it reached through the open door and tore out everything you had been keeping inside them. Your worth, because they were holding it. Your certainty that you could tell whom to trust, because you had filed your judgment inside the relationship. Your softness, which now looks like the reason the whole thing happened. It reached the floor of you because the floor of you was in there. So look again at the courier at your door and let the picture finish. His face is your face because the message came from you. The address it was sent from is the address it is going to because you posted it to yourself. The betrayer carried it. They did not write it. What they did was tear the envelope out of its hiding place and shove it into your hands too hard, at the worst possible hour. That is a real cruelty. It is still not authorship. Nietzsche circles the same wound from the other side. He writes that our longing for a friend is the thing that gives us away, that our faith in another quietly confesses we would rather not have to keep faith with ourselves. Set that line beside Jung and the two of them fuse. What you called trust was, in part, an arrangement. You placed a piece of yourself in someone else's keeping because holding it alone felt like too much. The friend was real. The friend was also the place you had mailed part of yourself for safekeeping. The woman sat with the hardest version of this. The protege had done her real wrong. That stays true. And what had truly gone to the floor of her had little to do with the protege. It was her lifelong, unexamined certainty that she always knew exactly whom to trust, a certainty she had never once turned on herself. She had projected her own blind spot outward and called it insight. The betrayal was simply where the projection came home. The letter is self-addressed. That much is settled now, and it changes the whole task. But the envelope is still sealed, and everything so far has been the outside of it. Therefore, we do the one thing the armor was built to stop. We open it, and we read what you wrote to yourself in your own hand before any of this began. You recognize the handwriting before you can read a single word. Everyone does. That lurch of the familiar, that drop in the stomach, is the sound of a projection coming home. Jung calls what is written there the shadow. People hear the word and picture something monstrous. They have it turned around. The shadow is everything about yourself you decided, early and without a vote, that you were not allowed to be. For the kind person, it is usually the same short list: anger, appetite, selfishness, the willingness to disappoint someone to their face, the freedom to be the one who takes instead of the one who gives. You did not kill those parts. You cannot. You only exiled them. And exiled things do not die. They wait. They leak out sideways where you cannot see them. And they get loud the moment someone else acts them out in front of you. This is why you could not forgive what they did. Read this slowly because it is the hinge of the whole thing. The act you cannot forgive is very often a photograph of your own shadow. They took what they wanted without apology, and you have spent a lifetime forbidding yourself to want anything at all without apologizing for it. They put themselves first nakedly, and the part of you that has never once been allowed to come first stood up so fast it took your breath. Some of your fury is clean. It answers a real wrong. And some of it is the shadow catching sight of itself in a mirror it never agreed to, screaming at its own reflection. This is the letter. It was never truly a note about them. Read it again, and it turns into an inventory of you, in your own hand, of everything you sent into exile in order to be the good one. And betrayal is the psyche's most violent and most efficient way of forcing the delivery. It could not reach you while everything was working. It reached you the instant everything broke. Take the lines one at a time. The first is your own anger, which you called being difficult and refused, and handed to other people to carry until one of them turned it on you. The second is your own no, the boundary you never once drew, because the good one accommodates. So you made yourself endlessly available, and then you resented the people who took the availability you kept offering. The third is your own worth, which you asked them to keep for you so that the day they left, it walked out with them. There is a fourth line, and it is the one the hand pressed hardest into the page. It is your own raw capacity for exactly what they did. Cornered hard enough, starved of enough, frightened enough, you could have been the one who turned. You have spent your whole life certain you never could, and the certainty itself was the distance. It held that capacity so far from you that when it finally walked through the door wearing someone else's face, you recognized nothing of your own in it. The gaps were there long before the betrayal. All the betrayal did was read them aloud. None of this is comfortable, and it was never meant to be. It runs opposite to the armor and opposite to the affirmation too. Nobody here is going to tell you to stand at a mirror and announce your worth. That worth was there the whole time. You had left it in someone else's keeping because you put it there, and no amount of declaring it out loud teaches you to hold it yourself. The woman read her own line last. Under the real wrong the protege had done, she found the sentence she had written to herself years before and refused to open. She had built an entire competent life on being the one who gives, mentors, vouches, holds the door. She had never once let herself simply want the door held open for her. She had braced to find cruelty in herself. What she found instead was a longing, her own unmet need to receive, exiled so completely that the only way it could reach her was as a wound. But you can recognize a letter and still refuse to open it. A refused letter stays in the world. It simply goes back into the mail, looking for another door, because the only door it has ever known is the one it came through. So you become its carrier. Slowly, without ever deciding to, you begin handing the same sealed wound to everyone who comes close, pressing it into their hands the way it was pressed into yours, too hard at the worst hour. You call it caution. You tell yourself you are shielding the next person or shielding yourself from them. The work you are actually doing is delivery. The kind one who is used becomes the cold one who uses first. The soft one who is read becomes the one who checks every new hand for the same seal. The betrayer gets a successor, and it is you, walking their old route with their old cargo. None of it feels that way from the inside. It arrives as small, reasonable economies. A message answered a day later than you once would have. A warmth held back to see what the other person does without it. A tally you never used to keep. Each one feels like the lesson finally learned. That is how the whole conversion is made, favor by withheld favor, across 100 ordinary evenings, until one morning you say something to a person who trusts you and hear, in the shape of your own sentence, a voice that was never yours. Some carriers mail the letter inward instead. You rule your own openness the reason for all of it. You call your trust stupidity and your warmth a defect, and you deliver the wound to your own door every morning, on time, signed for. It has the look of growth and the effect of an injury, finishing with your own hand the cut the other person began. This is the promise from earlier coming due, the one about the man who named the poison. Nietzsche reads resentment more clearly than almost anyone who has lived, and it did not spare him. He spent his life carrying it. Jung reads that ending as a man who mailed the more than human to a figure he called Zarathustra, and then climbed inside the envelope rather than open it. He became the letter he would not read. Seeing the poison so clearly, it turns out, is a long way from getting it out of your own blood. The woman had been on this route for a year without a name for it. She could feel herself turning into a carrier. She was precise now, guarded, a little feared, and in her own new hardness, she could hear the cadence of the one who had hurt her coming back out of her own mouth at people who had done nothing to her. She had won nothing. She was completing their work for them, one delivery at a time. That is what a sealed letter does while it stays sealed. It keeps moving, riding back out on your own shoulders to look for new doors. But one act takes it out of the mail for good, and it is the oldest instruction Jung ever gives. To withdraw a projection is the plainest and hardest work Jung ever describes. It means taking back, on purpose and with your eyes open, everything you had set down on the other person. Forgiveness comes later, if it comes at all. First you take yourself back, and the forgiving, when it comes easier, because there is far less left to forgive once you stop asking them to answer for parts of you they were only ever holding. Do it line by line, the way the letter was written. Take back your worth. Stop keeping it in another person. Skip the mirror and the mantra. What repossession asks is smaller and harder, the daily unglamorous act of judging your own value and declining to send it out for a second opinion. Take back your no. The boundary you outsource becomes a sentence you say in your own voice, to a real face, and survive the discomfort of. Take back your anger. Own it as yours, a live thing inside you, so it stops leaking out sideways, where anyone can pick it up and use it against you. This is the part people refuse, because they are sure that holding their own anger is the first step to becoming what hurt them. If I pick this up, I turn into them. The reverse is what actually happens. Disowned anger stays. It waits under the floor and moves without your permission. And what moves without your permission is what carries you back toward the thing you feared. Anger you can feel in your own two hands has a shape, and a thing with a shape can be aimed or held or set down. You were raised to keep no anger at all and to call that goodness. Anger is also what lets you defend what you love, and without it, kindness has nothing to stand on. Take back your teeth. A person who can bite and chooses not to is kind. A person who cannot bite is only harmless. Those are different things, and you were handed the second one under the name of the first. This is what Jung means by individuation, brought all the way down to the ground, becoming one whole person, instead of a bright half that keeps its darkness in other people's houses. The self he points toward is what remains when the mask is no longer needed, because you are finally holding all of yourself, the gold and the shadow, in the same two hands. Betrayal of all things is what forces the delivery. It is a brutal courier. It is often the only one the sealed-up psyche will open the door for. And this is where Nietzsche, who could not save himself, still hands you the last piece. He has a phrase for the stance that ends resentment, amor fati, a love of one's fate. People flatten it into gratitude for the harm, which sells it short. What it names runs deeper and colder. It is the moment you stop spending your one life wishing this had not happened, because you can finally see that the person standing here, holding all of themselves at last, is the person it happened to. To wish the wound away now is to wish this steadier self out of existence. You would not make that trade. That refusal, right there, is the poison, leaving the blood. Nietzsche and Jung end in the same place. Nietzsche says, stop letting the wound write your life. Will it, own it, become who you are. Jung says the only way to do that is to take back what you set down on other people and carry your own shadow yourself. Both of them are describing one act from two sides. Read the letter, take it out of the mail for good. The woman went after neither revenge nor a speech. She did something quieter and much harder. For the first time in her life, she let someone pull a chair up for her. She said a real no to the next person who reached for her generosity as though it cost nothing. She took her teeth back. The protégé shrank into what they had always been, one courier among many, and the thing that had gone to the floor of her, she bent down and picked up and kept. It had been hers the whole time. It only had her name on it. So go back to your own door and your own courier and the face you did not want to find under the hat. The people who betrayed you did a real wrong, and they were still only the delivery. The letter is addressed to you in your own hand, and it has been sitting on the table this whole time while you circled it and called the circling healing. You do not have to open it today, but you can stop shooting the courier. You can stop hunting him in every new face, and when you are ready, you can do the one thing the armor was built to prevent, which is to read what you wrote to yourself long before any of them arrived. The one question worth carrying out of this is simple. What did you ask that person to hold for you that you have never once held for yourself? Name it. And if this found you at the door with the letter still sealed, stay close, because the next one is about what you do the morning after you finally open it.
Empaths aren't broken. They're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com.